Today we will go all the way back to the opening fundamentals with a very classic game by Paul Keres
Oh,
from the 1954 Olympiad.
oh, opening fundamentals. Okay, so it's like
Yeah,
getting the minor pieces out, trying to cover the
yes, you
center.
will see. It's going to
All
come
right.
from a Sicilian.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Keres is playing white against Saitar Yaroslav. And remember that back then there wasn't really as much theory as there is now. So people were really playing based on understanding where the pieces are going and some very typical ideas that they either knew or came up with themselves or learned from other classic games.
Mm-hmm.
So openings were very different back then. And here we have a Sicilian Najdorf right from the start. Keres
Okay.
plays bishop g5, which is a very principled line by white. Black goes knight d7. It's less popular nowadays, but we will see kind of some reasons for it.
That
So
would it's
this is,
so tempting to already take the pawn on e6, but yeah, that's a different story.
yeah, it's a very classic setup. And after castles and queen to c7, um, this is the first moment where you and those at home can stop and think, um, where should the bishop go after this bishop after queen to c7?
e6.
Right away.
It won't work. It won't work. So I think the normal, I don't know the theory about the knight Earth that much, but I think normally it can go to b3 just to keep the line
Yeah.
occupied. But there's probably also a version where it can go to d3, I guess. And hmm. But when you're asking me like this, there must be something very special about it, Svitlana. What about you at home? Do you know, do you play the Night Of? I'm curious. So, what is the correct move, Svitlana?
The right move is actually bishop takes e6, but you stopped way too early.
Okay.
You saw it way too early and then you stopped way too early.
That, that is that theory even? Yes.
So basically, in this line, nowadays Black most often plays queen to a5, and that's considered the main line now, but it's still very complicated after something like f4.
Oh.
Queen c7 is still played sometimes, but it's considered to be more of a mistake. And
Hmm.
specifically, maybe it happened because of this game, maybe because of, similar games and just, development of the computers. But now there is this bishop takes on e6 move. Other moves, maybe even neither players would be more inclined to say these more normal moves. Like bishop to b3 is totally okay, but it's kind of passive because you missed that bishop to e6 opportunity. Bishop to e2, I would say, is even worse because the bishop is doing even less there and
Yeah.
runs into things like, b5 in the future. Um, there is also knight takes e6. And knight takes to e6 is not as good of a version as a sacrifice as bishop takes e6,
Okay.
because here Black can simply take, and then after the bishop takes, it's not as threatening as the knight standing there on e6.
Hmm. Okay.
It's still, a reasonable sacrifice, but
Can I
it's just,
can I
yeah, not
quickly
as,
ask what happens if you take with the knight on e6 and the queen takes on c4?
yeah, of course.
Also
This one,
possible.
it's the position is around equal after that because after
Oh.
this, queen takes d6, white has two
Oh.
pawns for the piece, but some attack going on, so the compensation is actually balanced.
That I didn't see. Well prepared. Thank you. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Good to know. All right.
But bishop e6, you were completely right. This sacrifice doesn't really lead to mate or anything, but it does a very important thing. It deprives black of the right to castle.
I like that. I always like that. Sometimes
Always.
it's more important for me to let the opposite side not castle than to win a pawn or something.
Yeah, yeah, and that's good.
Depends.
And after queen to c4 now, of course, the queen had to move away, and c4 is one of those moves that actually attacks the knight. The really important part of that sacrifice, of that bishop e6 sacrifice, was the move now, because there's only basically one move that can maintain white's advantage.
I
So,
believe so for you at home, right? If I'm a bit too quick with my moves, then always pause the video. I will always give you couple of seconds to think about this, but it has to be knight d5, right?
Yes, knight d5. So, it's always a good idea to bring more pieces to the opponent's king and in
It
the
is.
center. So it's something very classic and very good to do in the opening. Yeah, I mean, there's some other options. They're not as good. Basically, the main good thing about white's position is this knight. So if you try to get rid of it with knight to f8, this is second best, but it's not good principles wise because you're actually just, getting rid of your best piece. You're helping black pieces develop.
Mhm.
And okay, the position is still very reasonable and very, I would even say really good for white after queen d6 and maybe e5 in the future, but it's not as huge threats as we have with knight to d5. So whoever found knight
Yes.
d5, good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I feel great.
Yes. So, usually at this point, black went king to f7. So since they're not going to castle and there was this knight c7 threat, they decide to go there. Get rid of the knight
Mhm.
and maybe castle by hand in the future.
And
So
attack with the
you
king.
you mentioned briefly that you really like that for you, let's say, king could be more important than a pawn or something like that. So when
Yes.
you evaluate the position, what do you look at? What are the factors that you take into consideration to say like, okay, I'm in a good spot, like white is better, or maybe you don't do that during the game?
Maybe I don't do that, but that's such a good question because I probably would, in this situation, I would probably feel anxious. Did I do the right thing? Was this a stupid Arne move, as we all know it, as I've played it so often? Or do I actually have some advantage here? Now, the problem with all of this is that I normally think if I'm in a position like this, that's fun and that's an advantage for me. So here I
Mm-hmm.
would just feel the same, but I probably am not very good at evaluating it. But I will try it for now. So let me give a quick shot about it. First of all, black cannot castle, like
Yeah.
only artificially. That's not bad. Then we have a little bit of a threat on c7 at one point. There's a check on d8, which might be cute. The queen on c4 is a bit unhappy. Our bishop is on g5 and can also maybe do some damage. Maybe we can use f4 and push forward with f5 to give even more threats to the king. But first and foremost, we have to get our knight on e6 somewhere else because I don't see an immediate mate threat. There's too many pieces which can block this. So black, though, has, of course, 4 minor pieces, but 2 of them are not even part of the whole game yet. I
Yeah.
mean, as always, or like not always, but as often, the Sicilian bishop on c8, he's just like a silent piece, a sad piece, like the rook on a8 as well. I think white overall, if you would see the computer evaluation, I think white has a slight tiny advantage.
Okay. Okay. It's actually more of an advantage than you think.
Huh.
So the advantage is really good. And you've mentioned a lot of the really important factors. So basically, I really like when evaluating the position, I like the approach of Ramesh RB. He's written a lot of books, trained a lot of Indian talents. And he says that there's 6 elements that are the most important when you're evaluating it.
Oh,
And they're in order of importance. So the first one is king safety, exactly what you said. Because if your king is not safe, you can have a rook if you want, but if it's mate, you'll lose the game anyways. So king safety is always number one when you're evaluating. Then it's the activity of pieces. Also, exactly was the first thing that you looked at with how many pieces are active, how many pieces are in the game.
mhm.
Then it's material. So I was actually, when I first saw
Ooh.
it, I was surprised to find out that, okay, material is actually that, number 3 in
That
all
is
of this.
interesting, yes. If there's like a ranking about for those things,
Yeah.
then yeah, that is
I
interesting.
mean, of course, it's subjective and it always
Sure,
depends on the
of course.
actual tactic on the board. But yeah, material is number 3. Then it's the pawn structure. And then it's already space and weaknesses and all of these more positional factors like that. But I thought it's nice to like maybe most people already do this in their heads, but it's nice to, put it into words and to actually maybe use it next time you're evaluating a position because it gives it more of a system and lets you prioritize prioritize these things and to figure out how the position is. But of course, always it's going to be about the actual tactic on the board. If you're winning rook on the next move, of course, that matters a lot more than whatever the person's pawn structure is.
Yes, as
But
always, yeah.
or even the king safety sometimes. So it always depends, but I was a little bit like surprised when I found out that oh, this is actually like a ranking that he uses, and if he uses it and he's such a great coach, that means that it's a good way to think about things when you're trying to evaluate the position.
That would also explain why this is what my colleague said. He said, like, the Indian talents in the candidates masters, that'll be Vidit, Gukesh, and Prag. They are
Yeah.
playing so creative and they're like brave. They're not like making those moves like bishop b3. They would go and sacrifice the bishop on e6. If they wouldn't know about it, they would just go like, this looks good, this is the piece activity. So it makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense what you're saying here too, that piece activity is maybe underrated, because I
Yeah.
also,
And
not for
about this
engines
position
though.
specifically. Sorry?
Not for engines though. I don't know.
Not
Maybe
for,
it's
yeah,
like
not always for engines,
yeah.
true.
That's the
True.
thing.
But we're also playing against humans, so
True.
they see approximately the same things that you see, right? Um, Basically, in this position, you were very right about, your evaluation of the pieces. You even mentioned the queen. So you didn't mention the right move, but you said that the queen feels uncomfortable. So
Yes.
actually, the best move that gives white pretty much a winning position,
It's
it's
b3.
very tough to see, but
Is it b3?
it is b3.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Well, I thought about it too, because the queen has really only 3 spots to
Right.
go to, right? Yeah.
So these are taken. This one gets met with knight d8, so that doesn't work. I mean, everything else is just, taken. This
Yeah.
is also not a good square, probably some knight c7. So the only square actually left.
But c6 is
Oh no, no knight
yes.
c7. You can even play something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You might even trap it with some a4 before c4. I'm not sure. You can probably trap that queen. Queen
Gotcha.
e4, I think, is the only one that leaves it a little bit of space. And in that case, there's an important move, knight from d going to c7, so you avoid that trade on d5, while also defending this knight. And you keep this rook hanging until it is a good moment to take it. And after something like this, we join the rook to e1, so that was,
That's very good. Yeah.
and that's also an important factor. If you can always join an extra piece, you do it. And then once you stabilize all the pieces, you get the knight out of danger on e6, then you can take the
How
rook on
funny.
a8.
What a
So,
funky position, because I mean it would
right.
be a very nice move to put the knight from f6 to e8 now, so all minor pieces are on one line.
Yes, they're
But
all in the
yeah,
back. But
crazy.
b3 is the hard move,
Yeah.
and that makes white's position, that just proves that white's position is so dominating
Huh.
because of that piece activity. Now, in the actual game, white played bishop takes f6, and then the best move for black was to play knight takes f6. And after b3, queen f1, queen takes
Oh,
f1,
what?
this was the computer's best. But as a human, you
Wow.
just never aim to give up your
No.
queen that easily. So it is hard to kind of figure this out.
Super hard,
Black
yeah.
just gets a lot of pieces for it, basically. It's 2 pieces and a rook, usually very good for the queen.
Yeah.
So as long as the king and the rest of the pieces can survive and somehow activate themselves in the next 10, 20 moves, black will black will be okay.
Hmm.
Still not out of danger, but slightly better for white. So that's what I mean about like the material as well. It's sometimes hard to give up the queen, but if that means that your king can gain a bit more safety, it could be a good idea.
The rule
So
number 1 about the evaluation, as we
yeah,
just
for
learned.
sure. King takes
Oh,
e6 was
king takes
happened in the
e6.
game.
Hmm.
Maybe, Ramesh RB's rules didn't exist back in 1954, so this guy goes to the king to e8. I mean, of course, he was a strong player, and sometimes, I mean, I would maybe even be inclined to do that if I get a lot of material for it.
Hmm.
I'll be like, okay, I'll survive. And if I survive, life is great. But yeah, king in the center out of the opening is definitely not, an opening principle that you should follow. Definitely should be avoided. But it can also be sometimes hard to punish it and to actually find the most precise way to finish it off. So in the actual game, we got, of course, the bishop hanging here. So the bishop moves away, keeping up the threats and just staying on the long diagonal.
Hmm.
Knight f6 was played because queen g4 was a big threat, but this drops an important b6 square.
Oh,
So after the
back we
capture,
go.
knight b6,
Oh, that's of course. Didn't even see that. Yeah, yeah.
and the knight takes on a8. I don't know, do
Okay.
you get nervous in such cases when the attack didn't lead to mate or it kind of finished off?
This is funny because I just wanted to mention that, and absolutely because I think I won't call it nervous. I would call it like, no, now everything is
Concerned.
lost.
Mhm.
I'm a piece down and my attack just vanished. So this is my normal reaction. Happens
Right.
quite often.
Usually, though, I would say once the attack finishes, you have something in return for it, whether it's, okay, the king is still slightly exposed or the pawn structure is really bad. I
Hmm.
mean, in this case, it's not that controversial. We regain the material and the king stays in the center. So
Yeah.
here for sure, white is, well off. But yeah, but in general, it's a tough spot because you were hoping for the mate and then it doesn't happen. But then I guess it's important to focus on these weaknesses that are still left, like whether it's the king, bad pawn structure, or like an inactive rook on a8, whatever it is. Because there still must be some weaknesses left from the attack that you started. So, just keep uh, keep it going in that
Keep
case because
pushing.
you have nothing else left to lose. So um, in this case, it wasn't that complicated because the material was just regained. But now one more important principle comes into play. When you're up material, like here we have an exchange, it's pretty good, should be enough. Trade material. So queen to d5
Wow.
offers the trade of queens. And of course, you would like to do it because you're up in exchange, and it would be easier to win in that and less risky.
Hmm.
Many moves here win. Any endgames like this would be completely winning for white, so that one
Well,
is,
because you now get the bishop. That is
yeah, you
magnificent,
get the
of
bishop,
course. Yeah.
there's no bishop pair, enough pawns, rook, open files, so
Hmm.
everything is great there. Um, Now, of course, many moves will win for white, but I really like the rook lift with rook to a3, making once again another piece join. And after bishop to d8, it ended in a nice move, knight to b6. And the game ends here. So the goal here is that after, let's say, bishop takes, there's queen to f7,
Oh, and the bishop cannot
and
go in
now
between.
there's no bishop
Nice.
e7 coverage, and instead we take on f6, win the rook, win the game. And if queen takes on b6 here, there's queen to f5. That
Yeah.
one took me a bit to see, but queen
Oh.
f5, and then if the king moves away here, we win the bishop. And if he moves away here, then we win the bishop in this way. And, mating threats are even
Oh.
more,
See, I didn't
uh,
even see that. Okay.
yeah, even more, coming even more into play. So that's how the game ended with a nice knight b6 tactic. And it was a very short game, right? But there's some takeaways that just, reinforce what we already know and what, is sometimes is good to remember that the king in the
Absolutely.
center is never a good idea and that you should pay attention to it early on because it might become too late. Notice how it actually it happened so early. It happened on move 8
Hmm.
for black. They've done seemingly nothing wrong with queen to c7, but that started a powerful attack. So you should both be careful about it on, yeah, whichever side you're on, whether you're slightly more under attack or on the attacking end, always looking for these things. And you, Arne, seem to have no problem with it because you always are on the high alert for moves like bishop takes on e6.
Yeah. Well, Yeah. So, but since I was learning chess a little bit more, I'm trying to move away from those sacrifices. So this is a
Hmm.
bit of a problem because I would go like, first of all, I would probably think if my opponent is the strength of myself or is even stronger, I would
Hmm.
think like they cannot make a mistake like that. This has to be theory. There must be something which I don't know, which I didn't see.
Hmm.
So I cannot take on e6.
Right. And I'm
So
not saying always sacrifice. It's
yeah,
just that you need to be alert about them. So like
that
just
is
having
correct.
that, calculating it on every move, or maybe you prepare it. Maybe you move away and then think about that move. So
Hmm.
that can also be a good skill to have. So it's funny that you're trying to move away more from sacrifices, but I think just having that vision is good. And at some point, and actually you shouldn't think that the opponent is also flawless. I always consider the opponent as seeing approximately the same things that I see. So, if something took me a double take to like see, if I didn't think something worked first, but
Hmm.
then I looked a second time and it worked, then there's a chance that the opponent might have missed it. But if it's something super simple, then yeah, obviously, consider it more, but never, fully trust the opponent either, because we're all human and we all make mistakes, and you could be on
Ah,
the other side too, making a similar mistake.
so
So,
so much good advice, and you've proven you're taking action in the things you're saying because yeah, you're scoring pretty well. Can I ask? You played a simul very recently. How did that go? Did you win a couple of games?
I've played what? Sorry.
A simul?
Ah, Simul. Yes, it
Simul,
was
simul.
fun.
Oh.
It was fun, but I couldn't. For me, it sounds different. But it was fun. It was a lot of work, and it was with the clocks, so it's definitely like a different experience.
Mhm.
But I really love it. I do it. I do the Simul every year. So far, it's whoever wins the club championship gives the Simul afterwards. Um, I mean, I hope it's gonna keep going on. If I don't win
I know,
anymore, I
I know
won't give
what you
it.
mean.
But I like it's a nice like yearly tradition that my club has, and it's always fun. And
Mhm.
I think because it's like a simul game, I'm more inclined to like do something fun like this, or like sacrifice a pawn, sacrifice a piece. So it's for sure a good experience, and for me and for the club people as well, it's always a fun.
Nice. Excellent. Thank you so much, Svetlana. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We see each other soon enough. Bye bye.